Numerous other things you didn't know you needed to know pour out in torrents day after day after day. What is the point of them? David Grossman engaged 38.3% of his brain with the question.
Any day's newspapers are full of surveys. Some, like this morning's on drugs, are from Home Office research, though how they get anyone to answer is another matter.
Please, I think we've dealt with this issue.
Other surveys seem a bit more, well, fluffy, like the one in this morning's papers about 46% of couples not spending time in the same room as each other when they get home from work. So who's paying for all these surveys? Well, Newsnight has, as you'd expect, conducted a survey. At number 3 of our favourites this week, that poll on working couples not spending enough time together. It was actually paid for by a group called the At Home Society, which was actually created by the drinks group Diageo and is, I quote, dedicated to people spending quality time together and the sociable enjoyment of spirits. At number 2, we learned that 25% of dogs are stressed. This was actually paid for by a pet insurance company. And at number 1, a survey that told us that the nation's favourite canapé is the cheese straw, paid for by a supermarket chain. When a client comes to you, why will you suggest a survey?
Well, the truth be told, and this is the problem that most consumer brands have, is that their product in itself is not news. So they have to find some other way to get onto the news agenda. And I think if you pick up anyone, certainly of the tabloids, any day, you'll find 3 or 4 stories that are statistically based. And so obviously it's a route to exposure.
Would you mind checking something on the men's survey for? Yeah, sure.
At the offices of Cosmopolitan, they love surveys. However, they tend to carry out their own, rather than rely on the ones that come ready-made from PR agencies.
There are so many surveys because people want answers. People want to know what is going to make them good in bed, or what is going to make them a fortune, or, you know, isn't it funny that women always do this or men always do that? Basically, there's a lot of mysteries in life, and we want answers, and to many of us, answers are numbers.
But there's a tension here. If the survey's results sound unsurprising, then it's unlikely to get written about. So some of the statistics generated sound at least 25% odd. Can I just put this one to you? 1 in 10 men have used knitting needles.
Apparently.
You're having us on.
That's the result.
1 in 10.
And there you go, yeah. And that was of a survey of 500, I think, that one. So that's 50 people said yes, they do.
50 men told you they use knitting needles?
Yes.
Look at me and tell me yes.
Yes.
The point is, you have to know the context of any survey. For example, what on earth did all those men say they used knitting needles for?
Well, the first thing I think to look for is what were the questions asked, what was the sample. You look for the small print. And that's what experts would do, and they would not take seriously any survey that doesn't have some information about how it was conducted, what the questions were asked of, and, very importantly, who commissioned it.
They're probably not as rigorous as a university professor might do, but they're certainly the ones that my firm does. We employ professional market researchers to carry them out. It depends how many people are being surveyed. We tend to do 500 or 1,000, which I think most people will say is statistically quite sound. If a university was doing it, they'd probably retest it several times. But then again, nobody's launching a product or developing a product based on the findings. What we're trying to do is find out something interesting about lifestyle, really.
So what does all this mean? Well, looking at the entire week's newspapers and news output, we can say that a staggering 19.8% of Britain's news comes from surveys. The BBC would like to point out that this survey is in no way statistically accurate or indeed valid and merely represents an attempt by Newsnight to generate some publicity for the programme.